I remember the night like it was yesterday. The call came in around 2 a.m. A domestic disturbance at a small ranch on the outskirts of town. I was working the graveyard shift, so I got the honors. I grabbed my partner, Rachel, and we rolled out in our cruiser, lights flashing, but no siren. No need to wake up the whole neighborhood just yet. As we pulled up, I could see the front door was open, and a figure was pacing back and forth on the porch. My gut told me this wasn't going to be a routine call. I keyed my mic. Dispatch, this is Deputy 14. We're on scene. Requesting backup. I didn't wait for a response. I knew they'd send someone. Rachel and I approached the porch, our eyes scanning for any signs of trouble. The pacing figure, a young man in his early 20s, stopped and turned towards us. His eyes were wild, and his face was slick with sweat. I could smell the booze on him from where I stood. "Hey, buddy, what's going on here?" I asked, trying to sound calm and friendly. He didn't respond, just kept staring at me like I was the enemy. I took a step forward, my hand resting on my belt, near my gun. Rachel mirrored my move, her eyes locked on the suspect. That's when I heard the screams. A woman, crying and yelling, coming from inside the house. My heart rate ticked up a notch. This was getting ugly fast. I took another step forward, my eyes locked on the suspect. "Listen, buddy, why don't you take a seat on the porch and we'll figure this out?" He didn't move, just kept staring. Suddenly, a figure darted out of the house, a young woman, her face bruised and swollen. She ran straight to us, almost colliding with Rachel. "Please help me," she sobbed. That's when all hell broke loose. The suspect made a move towards us, and I knew we had to act fast. I stepped out of my cruiser and onto the worn asphalt of Highway 12, the crunch of gravel beneath my boots a familiar soundtrack to what was already shaping up to be a long day. The sun was still climbing, casting a golden glow over the scene before me. A silver sedan, its rear windshield shattered, sat cocked at an angle on the shoulder. The air was heavy with the scent of gasoline and smoke. As I approached, I could see the driver, a young woman, slumped over the steering wheel. My gut told me she wasn't going anywhere. I radioed for backup and an ambulance, my voice steady and even. Experience had taught me to compartmentalize, to focus on the task at hand. I began to survey the area, my eyes scanning the surrounding terrain for any signs of witnesses or additional evidence. The silence was almost palpable, broken only by the distant hum of a passing truck. I noticed a piece of torn fabric caught in the sedan's door handle, a snippet of fabric that didn't match the woman's clothing. My mind began to spin, possibilities swirling like a vortex. I knelt beside the vehicle, my gaze drawn to the shattered glass and the dark smudges on the door. Fingerprints, maybe. I made a mental note to get forensics on the scene ASAP. As I stood, my eyes met those of the woman, her glassy stare a haunting reminder of the fragility of life. I took a deep breath, my training kicking in. This was a crime scene, and I was the first responder. I had a job to do. I began to methodically process the area, collecting evidence and taking notes. The sun continued its ascent, casting long shadows across the highway. I worked in silence, my thoughts a jumble of theories and questions. What had happened here? Who was this woman, and why was she alone on this desolate stretch of road? I'll never forget the morning we got the call about the convenience store robbery. It was a typical Tuesday, the sun just starting to peek over the horizon, casting a golden glow over the small town I'd sworn to protect. My partner, Rachel, and I were sipping coffee, going over the previous night's reports, when the dispatcher's voice crackled through the radio. "Robbery in progress, 123, Main Street." We hit the lights, and I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins as we sped towards the scene. When we arrived, the store owner was shaken but unharmed, and the perpetrators were long gone. That's when I saw them. 2 suspects, captured on the security cameras, their faces clear as day. I remember thinking, these kids are amateurs. The way they were laughing, high-fiving each other, it was like they thought they'd gotten away with something. The store owner said they made off with a few $100 and a pack of cigarettes. Small-time stuff. But it's the little things that get to you, you know? The way they didn't even bother to cover their faces, the way they seemed to enjoy the thrill of it all. It was like they thought they were above the law. I've seen it before, of course, the entitled, the reckless, the ones who think they can outsmart the system. But there was something about these 2 that stuck with me. Rachel and I started canvassing the area, showing the surveillance footage to the locals, trying to get a lead on their identities. It wasn't long before we got a hit. An anonymous caller tipped us off to a possible location, and we were on our way. I could feel my gut telling me we were close, that these kids were going down. And I was right. We found them holed up in a crummy motel on the outskirts of town, the stolen cash and cigarettes scattered all over the room. As I cuffed them, I couldn't help but think, you should have kept your faces hidden, kids. You should have kept your mouths shut. But they didn't, and now they were going down for it. It was a small victory, but it was a reminder that, no matter how small time the crime, justice will always catch up. I stepped out of the cruiser, the crunch of gravel beneath my boots a familiar soundtrack to a scene that was all too familiar. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay, a smell that clings to your clothes long after you've left the scene. I took a deep breath, letting the familiar rhythms of the job calm my nerves. This was what I'd been trained for. As I approached the small, run-down shack, I could see the crime scene tape fluttering in the breeze like a macabre ribbon. I ducked under it, my eyes scanning the perimeter for any signs of disturbance. The techs were already here, their cameras and lights casting an otherworldly glow over the scene. I made my way to the makeshift evidence table, a rickety card table set up on the worn wooden porch. The tech, a quiet kid named Jake, looked up as I approached. "Deputy," he nodded, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. I nodded back, my gaze falling on the carefully arranged evidence. A small, rusty key lay on a plastic tray, next to a crumpled-up piece of fabric that looked like it had been torn from a shirt. A few scattered bullets, their brass casings glinting in the light, seemed almost insignificant next to the real prize, a small, leather-bound book. I picked it up, the worn cover creaking in my hands. The pages were dog-eared, the edges yellowed with age. I flipped through them, my eyes scanning the handwritten notes. This was it, the evidence we needed to put away a killer. I could feel the weight of it, the gravity of what we'd found. I looked up, meeting Jake's gaze. "Get this to the lab, priority 1. I said, my voice low and even. "I want to know what secrets this book holds." I remember the day the charges were filed like it was yesterday. I was sitting at my desk, sipping on a lukewarm cup of coffee, going over the case files one last time. The sun was casting its morning glow through the blinds, illuminating the dust particles dancing in the air. It was a typical day at the station, the hum of printers and keyboards providing a familiar background noise. As I read through the reports, my mind kept wandering back to the victims' families. The faces, the tears, the pleas for justice. I had seen it all before, but it never got any easier. The weight of responsibility settled heavy on my shoulders. I had to get it right. The knock on my door broke the spell. It was the DA, a stern-looking woman with a kind heart. She had a folder clutched in her hand, her eyes locked on mine. I knew what that folder contained. "Deputy," she said, her voice firm but measured. "We're filing charges against the suspect. Multiple counts of murder, kidnapping, and assault." I felt a sense of relief wash over me, mixed with a hint of anxiety. This was it, the culmination of weeks of hard work, of sleepless nights, and endless cups of coffee. I had to make sure the evidence was airtight, that the case was rock solid. As I took the folder from her, the weight of it felt heavier than usual. This was more than just a case. It was justice for the victims, for their families, for the community. I opened the folder, scanning the pages, my eyes scanning the charges, the evidence, the statements. It was all there, black and white, a testament to the darkness that humanity was capable of. But it was also a beacon of hope, hope that justice would be served, that the perpetrator would be held accountable. I looked up at the DA, a nod of determination on my face. "Let's get this to trial," I said, my voice firm, my resolve unwavering. I take a deep breath, the smell of smoke and sweat still clinging to my uniform. The adrenaline rush has worn off, leaving only exhaustion and a lingering sense of unease. The scene is secured, the perp in custody, and the victims receiving medical attention. It's time to process the aftermath. As I walk through the crime scene, my boots crunch on shattered glass and debris. The silence is deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos that erupted just hours ago. I notice the tiny details. A child's toy lying amidst the wreckage, a family photo torn and crumpled on the floor. My mind wanders to the families involved, the lives forever changed by this senseless act. I stop in front of the patrol car, my gaze fixed on the bullet holes that riddle the door. A shiver runs down my spine as I recall the sound of gunfire, the feeling of vulnerability as I took cover behind my vehicle. It's a sound that'll haunt me for a while, a reminder of the risks I take every day. I take a moment to collect my thoughts, mentally replaying the events that transpired. What could I have done differently? Was there a way to prevent this from happening? The questions swirl in my head, but I know I'll have to wait for the investigation to unfold before I get any answers. As I begin to document the scene, my training takes over. I methodically collect evidence, take statements, and note every detail. It's a routine I've performed countless times, but this time it feels different. This time, it's personal. I glance up to see my colleagues watching me, their faces etched with concern. I offer a reassuring nod, trying to convey that I'm okay. But the truth is, I'm not. I'm shaken, and it'll take time to process the emotions that come with facing mortality. For now, I'll focus on the task at hand. I'll do my job, and I'll do it well. But later, when the dust settles, and I'm alone with my thoughts, I'll confront the demons that linger in the shadows of my mind. I remember that crisp autumn morning like it was yesterday. The sun was still climbing over the horizon, casting a golden glow over the small town of Willow Creek. I was sipping on a lukewarm cup of coffee, going over the day's reports, when the sheriff called me into his office. As I walked in, I could sense a hint of urgency in his tone, though his expression remained stoic as always. He gestured for me to take a seat, and I did, my eyes scanning the room for any clues about what this impromptu meeting was about. The smell of stale cigarettes and worn leather filled the air, a familiar scent that always brought me back to this place. "Sheriff," I asked, trying to keep my curiosity in check. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers together. "Deputy, we've got a situation brewing. Intel suggests a group of outsiders is planning to roll into town, looking to stir up trouble." His eyes locked onto mine,